Hi, everybody, and welcome back to OMN Insights. My name is Sareti Kadir, and I'm your host. And before I introduce today's guest and topic, we have a small announcement to play.
Sagalee Bridge Reality Garee Samu'eel Birhaanuuti. Manni jireenyaa dhala namaaf ni barbaachisa. Inni kuni garuu jireenya lubbuu horee yaada namaa boqochiisa. Gaaddisa aara galfii ta'ee jiraachuuf nama sassachiisa. Maarree isinis kan akkanaa bitachuu yoo feetan akkasumas kan ofii qabdan gurgurtanii bu'a qabeessa ta'uun gara xiqqaatti yookaan gara guddaatti jijjiirrachuu yoo barbaaddan dafaa mariisisaa. Bridge Reality. Tora bilbila keenya 7674448 lamarratti nuuf bilbila. Bridge Reality Garee Samu'eel Birhaanuuti.
Today, our conversation is going to be a continuation of our analysis of the political and social crisis that Ethiopia is facing. And to help us have this conversation and this analysis, we are joined by activist Eyasped Tesfaye. Thank you so much for being with us today, Eyasped.
Thank you, Soreti, for inviting me to your show. It's really an honor to be on your show.
The honor is mine. So Ethiopia, Eyasped, is facing what can be described as a polycrisis in the sense that there are a number of intersecting and colliding political and social issues evident in the country. We have national groups, media and civil freedoms under attack by the state. The structure of the constitution and the rights of self-determination that it affords national groups has come under question recently, causing alarm. The political status of different faith groups has been an ongoing conversation, with both the push for an institutional separation by multinational groups in the Orthodox Church and now with the mosque demolitions in the country's capital. We have the ongoing war in Oromia with no real view of when or whether negotiations between the OLA and the Ethiopian government will continue. The cost of living crisis that's being felt globally and in Ethiopia, compounded by the drought and famine across much of the south and east of Oromia and other parts of the country. On top of that, there is the large-scale internal displacement and the continued culture of state violence manifest as mass unlawful detention and state dissidents facing violence used by the state against anyone who really protests it. Now, none of these are issues that live in isolation from each other. If you, Eyasped, were to develop a map of this polycrisis per se, what would you locate as the root cause or root causes of this crisis? And this can be historical moments, ways of being, knowing, doing, beliefs, or more. And who would you name to be the key actors in the exacerbation of this crisis?
So that's an excellent question, Soreti. We're having simultaneous and multiple catastrophic events occurring in our country and in the region as well. I was talking with some individuals here, and they were saying we want to come to Ethiopia to work, and we heard that there are jobs there, and we can access easy cash. And do you have any suggestion where we can come and work? And I say, no, please stay here. You're good here. Trust me. The inflation is going like crazy back in Ethiopia. In only about 6 months, the fuel price it quadrupled. And we have droughts, we have famines, we have mass atrocities being committed, we have civil war, we have high level of corruption, and of course the dictatorship. And also we have regional tensions. So yesterday I was reading a document that was written about current affairs in Horn of Africa, and for your surprise, there are active 27 potential conflicts that could erupt at any moment in the region. We have these situations in Djibouti. We have the active war in Sudan. We have these situations in South Sudan with the Nuers and the Dinkas. And, the region is literally in turmoil, and our country is no different. We have the new war with the Amhara militias, and also we have this war with the OLA, and all these. What is the root cause for all these problems? So, we have like we can came up with multiple causes, but I think the main problem of the country and also the region is the history behind the formation of these countries, these states. So, we are not like the Europeans. We don't have nation states in Africa. We have like different nations merged or split up in an artificial boundary due to the colonial problem. And like we love to brag about Ethiopia, that Ethiopia is not colonized. I know we have our own internal colonization, but we love to brag about that. But the fact is, even if we are not quote unquote colonized, we have a colonial boundary. We have like the Somali communities in Ethiopia, and we have the Somalis in Somalia and in Somaliland. We have the Afar communities in Ethiopia, and we have the Afar communities in Afar and Djibouti. These people are they have the same culture. They're like a nation, but they live in different states due to the colonial boundaries. Now, after these states was formed, the history is, I think, it's clear for everyone. The states were formed by force, and the problem is that the states are not accommodative at all. They have states are like individuals. They have their own essence. They have their own souls. And when we come to Ethiopia, the soul of the state, the essence of the state, does not reflect the identity and the color of like these different nations that are living in the same boundary. So every nations who lives in this boundary dream of its own like nation state. So if we are not going to have that, I think the problem will continue. So I'm sure you know about Okechukwu Oko. He's a Nigerian scholar, and he has this book where he comments on an ideal solution to the African problems. So he says we have to redraw the boundaries in Africa so that we can have smaller nation states like what we have in Europe. Um, I think it's an ideal solution. It's a bit too late to apply that, but at least we have to try to make the states as accommodative as possible. So with the Ethiopian constitution tries to do this basically. So it says there are different nations in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is not a nation state, and it's a multinational state. So we can coexist together as a political community, and we can try to integrate ourselves with economy and other things. But we can keep our identities and our nationhoods intact. We have the right to self-determination and everything. But this concept doesn't get along with some of the urban elites and the Amhara nationalists. I don't like to use the word nationalist for the Amhara movement. It's more like a supremacist movement. Nationalist movement is a movement to have the
Sorry,
right.
yes, but let me just stop you there. We're going to come to that. You've just said a lot of really powerful things in this first section of your answer that I want to unpack just a little bit, and then we'll come to this question of the Amhara national movement and how it relates to self-determination politics just in a minute. But you use this language here of the soul of the state not reflecting the reality of what makes up Ethiopia, and this being a problem that started at the formation of the state. And this is really vividly and powerfully put, in my opinion. And you've also made mention of the fact that the Constitution of Ethiopia does actually, in the way that it's written and formed, facilitate a way for us to build, using your language, a soul of the state that is more reflective of the reality that is Ethiopia. So given that the Constitution is there is possibility and there is some sort of source of stability in the constitution in the way that it's written and how it exists. How do you view the constitutional survey and the findings that were announced a couple of weeks ago, whereby some 75% of 1,123, I think, participants in this survey said that the parts of the Constitution that particularly uphold right to self-determination for the multinational group and for the multinational aspiration should be removed? And what do you think of the government announcing those findings at this particular time? What does it say about the government's read of the current political issues in the country, or what do you think the government was motivated by announcing something like that at this juncture?
I think the announcement was a bit. It have its own political reasons. I don't think they want to review the constitution currently, but they just want to ease tensions in the Amhara region. So I think it was a tactical move, just to calm down the protests in the Amhara region. Because this research that you're mentioning now, it was done like some 2 years ago. They just announced it now just to ease the tensions in the Amhara region. I don't think they're taking it seriously. Mm-hmm. In fact, even the document that they released, the date on the document is like October 2021 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Anyways. Coming back to what I was saying earlier, so the thing about the soul of states is like, let me give you a context. So I told you that there are Somalis in Ethiopia and Somalis in Djibouti, right? So let's see what's happening in Djibouti. So in Djibouti, there are like 3 communities living there: the Arabs, like the one who came from Yemen, and the others are the Afars and the Somalis. So if you look, the Afars live in Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. So we call this the Afar Triangle. These are the same people. In fact, they have the same traditional ruler. They have this same traditional sultan, and they were like the same people with same language, with same cultures, and everything. But now they're split into 3 states. Mm. And they dream of to have their own state, or a state that reflects their identity. Mm-hmm. But apparently now Djibouti is more like a Somalian state, because starting from independence, they only have a Somali ruler, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, only one family is ruling like Djibouti since independence. Now, tensions in Ethiopia with Afar and the Isa Somali community creates a tension in Djibouti. So last time, like it was like a year and a half ago, like something like that. So a war erupts between the Ethiopian Afars and the Isa community in Ethiopia. And guess what? There was a protesters in Djibouti about that, because the Afars in Djibouti feel that they belong to the Afars in Ethiopia, and the Somalis, same thing. So the government of Djibouti decided to cut down the internet. They shut down Facebook and TikTok, and they still can't access like these social medias. So the governments of the region, they tend to like suppress this kind of movements, and they think they will like silence everyone with guns. Yeah. So we have the same problem here in Ethiopia. We have the Oromo communities, Oromo nation. We have the Somali nation. We have the Amhara nation. We have the Tigrayans. We have like multiple nations here. And in the past, like the rulers of Ethiopia tried to forge a single nation state by design. It was official. Like they even said what we're following the French model to create and mold a single nation states that looks like the Amhara ethnic group. So this attempt failed miserably, and now the 1991 Constitution, the 1995 Constitution tries to amend these mistakes by admitting that Ethiopia is not a nation state. Ethiopia is a multinational state. So uh, we have to act like one. But as I said earlier, the Amhara supremacists and the urban nationalists don't want to accept this because they used to have this privilege with the language and even with the culture and everything. So they want to keep their privilege intact. One of their cries over the constitution is that the constitution in the preamble it says we the nations and nationalists of Ethiopia. It didn't say we the nation because we're not one nation, but they want to depict that as if we are one nation. We're not one nation. We're multiple nations within a state. So, for me, the major problem, the root cause of every war and everything, every problem in Ethiopia is the way that the state was formed. And currently, the constitution tries to amend that, but there are like multiple elites that don't want to get along with this.
Thank you for that really robust answer, Eyasped. You reminded me at the end of that answer that you were just actually answering the first question when you came back to the root causes, because it actually felt like you went through the entire contents of our discussion in that first response, just to say that it was extremely thorough. I want to come to actually one of the last points I wanted to raise before we come back to the point you were making about Amhara nationalism. And this question is related to what you're talking about here about the formation of Ethiopia as a state and what happened post-1991. In a convention organized by the Oromo Leadership Legacy and Advocacy Association called The Role of U.S. Policies and Prospects for Federalism in Ethiopia, Herman J. Cohen, former ambassador for the United States and Assistant Secretary of State, former again, said that, here, quote, in June 1991 at the London conference, I made a mistake for turning down Lynch Olate's request for holding Oromia's referendum. What do you think about this comment?
I'm not sure how to put it sincerely, but Cohen he's an old man. He changed his opinions a lot, so you cannot make a statement about his comments because he might came out and say some other thing that next day. But yeah, this is the problem with the West. All they want in the region is security, because if there is no security, the trade lines at the coasts will break down, and the other thing, they will have a problem with immigrants. So they don't care at all about any other things. One of the actors in the Sudan war, Hemeti, he was funded by the EU for the past decade just to guard the coast so that no African will migrate to the European countries. So they used to give him this money, and he built himself like a huge army. Now he's creating all these problems. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is they think that if Ethiopia remains like this, it's sort of secure, and with all the mini states, if all the mini states comes to happen, they think there will be a lot of wars. So they're not in favor of self-determination in this region. But self-determination is a basic rights for everyone. I believe that. So back in the London conference, of course, they made a mistake not to allow the Oromo nation to have the right to self-determination. Yeah, he was wrong. He was right. It was good of him to admit that, but he might came up and change his idea the next day.
Let me ask you, Eyasped, do you think that we're at a junction now where the only way to move forward in a manner that safeguards the genuine peace and genuine security of all peoples living in this region is that the country goes to referendums, or do you think that we are still not yet at that point?
I think we're not at that point, because having referendum is the democratic way of solving this the situation. I think we are on the brink of a larger civil war. I was commenting on a book called The Majority Backlash. The author is called Carlo Basta. And the problems with multinational states, is like uh, there is always this one ethnic group in a multinational state that want to dominate the others, and that there's this ethnic group that wants to mold the state in its own form. So let me just give you an example. So in South Sudan, we have this ethnic group called the Dinkas. So the Dinkas believes that they're the one who liberated South Sudan from Sudan. They think that they are uh, the patriots. So they think that they deserve more. They have the power, and they took the land of the Equatorians in South Sudan, and they want to exploit the oil of the Nuers and everything. So we have the same problem in Ethiopia as well. So the Amhara elites think that they are the one who have been safeguarding the borders of Ethiopia. They are the ones who fought with the invasions, the foreign invasions, and so they think that they own the state, and they want to create a state that looks like them. So every time the other nations or ethnic groups uh, asks the question of equity and equality and self-determination, these ethnic groups tend to have a backlash, and the crying the noises they make have a negative impact, and it even creates this animosity between the other ethnic groups and this so-called safeguarding a major ethnic group. So that's what we are facing in Ethiopia right now. The Oromos are asking for basic rights of self-determination. The Somalis are asking for basic rights of self-determination, and the Amharics and urban elites came and they say like, no, why are you asking this? It's because you're racist. It's because you want to exploit these ethnic divisions, and they want to name and shame you. And these actions of them are creating even more animosity with other ethnic groups. And I think I don't see like a middle ground happening soon. So yeah, my guess is that we're on the brink of a civil war, a larger one.
That feels accurate, though daunting to think about. And just coming off the comment you made, or there's just the end part of this analysis you made, and given that, as you've described really colorfully in this conversation so far, given that multinationalism has been a political ideology really used by diverse nation states in Ethiopia to resist the imposition of what is frequently described, and as you're calling here as well, the Amhara-sized state or Amhara-sized political society, or just Amhara domination altogether. How do you view the way that the idea of multinational federalism is now kind of being used as somewhat of a rallying cry by Amhara nationalists as well? Like, could this be an incline towards self-determination politics being a breakthrough for the political challenge of coexistence in Ethiopia by creating some ideological meeting point? Or do you think that it's just going to further exacerbate the crisis, and that this is just a very shallow co-option of ideology that doesn't actually resonate with what the Amhara are looking for, or they're not really genuinely relating to it?
So I have these friends in the Amhara elite group, and I always ask them, I mean, what do you lose if you just give a few things away? Like, the nations in Ethiopia are asking, they're not asking a lot. You ask for an additional federal language, and the research you were mentioning. So in Amhara region, the majority chose not to have another additional official language. So what would they lose if Afan Oromo becomes a federal language? What would Amhara lose if Somalian language becomes an additional federal language? They just want to control everything. They just don't want to announce for others. So I think they're not going to meet us in the halfway. So I think they will just continue. I'm talking about the elites, of course. They will just continue to try to impose their identity on others, their political thought on others, and this will create, as I said earlier, an animosity with others, and I think it will not turn out good for them. You know, so for historic reasons, the Ethiopian state resembles more like the Amhara ethnic, more like the Amhara ethnic group. So, you know, if they were willing to give a few little things away, they might have a state that that they might retain the state as it is, but their stubbornness is creating all this problem, and I think. As I said earlier, it's going to lead us to a civil war.
Coming now to the conclusion of our conversation and a bit of a focus on the dynamics of the war in Oromia, this ongoing war between the Oromo Liberation Army and the Ethiopian government, though it's certainly a war that OLA is fighting against the state's political ambitions, both historical and contemporary, and it describes this in detail in its brief manifesto released in January this year. It's also a war between an Oromo regional government and an Oromo populace, though other actors like the Fano militia, Eritrean forces, and federal forces, including the Revolutionary Guard, have been and are part of this war. There is still this outstanding dynamic whereby this is a war majorly between Oromo people, those part of the state and those resisting it. For the ending of this war to go hand in hand with clear steps taken towards the end of overall state violence in Oromia, in your view, how must the reality that this war is a war with Oromo people on both ends of it be factored into the conversations calling for change in Oromia, or does this not really matter?
It matters, of course. So last time the OLA, the delegates of OLA and the government have these discussions in Tanzania, and I was hoping that we are going to hear a good news. Unfortunately, the government uses that negotiation to just promote itself as a peace-loving government. When negotiations happens, you have this rule that you don't go out to the media and you don't talk details about the negotiations until it's done. But first, the negotiation was even announced by the prime minister, and the next day, like the day that the negotiation ends, government spokespersons, like members of the ruling party, was all over social media saying that OLA is still stubborn. They're not presenting demands, like attainable demands, and all those things. And I think the delegation of the OLA they were so decent, and they didn't want to talk about all the details. But I think they made a mistake there, because the people have to know what actually happened, what actually take place in Tanzania. Now we're not even having the second. We don't know when we're having, if even we are going to have a second negotiation. So the war in Oromia is basically, the ruling party thinks that Oromia is its base. So just to make a few things clear now, just because you're ethnically from the Oromo ethnic group, that doesn't mean you are a political Oromo. Even the emperors, like Emperor Haile Selassie, he was born from an Oromo family, but he identifies himself as an Amhara, and he's culturally speaking, he's Amhara. So the problem is with the ruling party is they consider Oromia as their base, but they're not acting like a political Oromos. Maybe they are not, or maybe they want to act as pan-Ethiopianists for political reasons or whatsoever. But if you're considering Oromia as your base, you need to meet the demands of the Oromos, at least somehow in some ways. But I don't see them trying to do that. And that's the reason why the youth in Oromia are marching with the Oromia Liberation Army. So I don't see this war ending soon because one, there is no like this diplomatic pressure that was that we used to have in the while we are having the war in the north. There was like this immense diplomatic pressure, but uh, the West wants to undermine the war in Oromia, because the war in Oromia starts even earlier before the war in with Tigray, but they want to undermine it because they think somehow it's an internal issues with Oromos, and I don't think that's right. And second reason, I don't see the ruling party, meeting the demands of the Oromo people. So if these two things continue, I don't see the war will end soon.
Thank you, Eyasped. This distinction you make between, an ethnic Oromo and a political Oromo, and the way and where the ruling party sits on this spectrum, I think is a really powerful way of responding to us understanding how Oromos can participate in this violence and why Oromos would resist the state, whereby there are Oromos leading it, and that was never really. Oromos leading the state was never the final destination or the answer to the Oromo political question. Eyasped, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate your insights, your analysis, and the generosity of your knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you, Soreti.
That was Eyasped Tesfaye, activist who joined us for a conversation on the ongoing Polycrisis in Ethiopia. As you know, we will be continuing this discussion, continuing our analysis about the social and political conditions of Oromia in future programs. So join us. My name is Soreti Kidia. You are watching OMN Insights.